You're watching WSTV Digital Media.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the November 14th, 2019 meeting of the City County Planning Board. At this time, would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston Salem TV Digital Media and will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. We're honored to have with us Councilmember Scipio in the audience. Thank you and welcome. Our first order of business today will be the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance for items for which the Planning Board staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For our public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one is permitted to speak unless the Planning Board asks them a question. The items under Section B of our agenda will require final action by the elected body, either the City Council or Board of Commissioners. As such, votes taken today are recommendations which are considered by the City Council or Board of Commissioners during its review of the requests. For general use zoning requests, the Planning Board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. The petitioner may not refer to a specific intended use of the property. For special use district zoning requests, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses of the site and give specific details on how the site will be developed. If you are addressing the board today, we would ask that before you begin your comments, please give us your name, address, and zip code for the record. So the first item of business today is the approval of minutes for the October 10th public hearing. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move approval. Second.
Okay. Approval motion made by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Corley for the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First item on the consent agenda is B1F1588. It's a request to rezone approximately 12.5 acres from AG, RS40, LI, and LIS to LIL, so limited industrial, limited use. The property is located on the west side of Wahlberg Road, south of Business Park Drive. This is a view of the subject property looking north on Wahlberg Road. The subject property is to the left.
Mr. Corley, we're not seeing anything on our screens.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good.
Gary.
Beautiful.
This is a view of the subject property looking north on Wahlberg Road. The subject property is on the left where those homes are. A couple of changes to the request since the publishing of the agenda book. They have proposed to eliminate some of the uses. The original request would have allowed all uses that are currently allowed in the LI zoning district. But the petitioner is now requesting to remove the uses agricultural production livestock, animal shelter public, fish hatchery, kennel, outdoor, motor vehicle body or paint shop, motor vehicle rental and leasing, motor vehicle repair and maintenance, motor vehicle storage yard, terminal, bus or taxi, adult daycare center, landfill construction and demolition 2 acres or less, landfill land clearing inert debris greater than 2 acres, borrow site, dirt storage, helistop, sanitary landfill, and shelter for the homeless. Those are all of the uses they propose to eliminate. And then they have also proposed an amendment to one of the conditions so that it will now read, the proposed building plans shall meet the architectural design and material requirements as specified in the Union Cross Protective Covenants, and all HVAC equipment shall be screened from view of Wahlberg Road as verified by planning staff. That is condition, currently condition A under prior to the issuance of building permits. They just changed the language around on that one. In addition to these changes, the petitioner has also volunteered a landscape area along Wahlberg Road that's 30 feet wide and installed atop a 6-foot berm. That landscape area will have 3 deciduous trees and 14 primary evergreen plantings per 100 linear feet. The area plan recommends industrial use for the property, which is what this is, and staff recommends approval of the request.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Corley?
Planning staff then has them comply, determines whether they comply with Union Cross Protective Covenants. Planning staff does that. That's just like UDO. I mean, it's just like,
Correct.
yeah, there's no architectural committee for that or anything like that. Right.
I believe there is, but again, this really isn't part of that park. But they have agreed to, basically construct their buildings consistent with those covenants, and we would be the ones that would look at that and make sure.
No other body that they have to satisfy except for planning
Not
staff.
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Correct.
I would just like to say that this is a really quality development area in Forsyth County that's going to be continued to be developed by a premier development company that I think we're all so proud of. And I just want to say thank you for all you've done and for making this request even better than it originally was. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Is there a motion on consistency?
So moved.
Got to read your. Yeah.
You got to read the script. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I move that the planning board find the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Steelman, second by Mr. Lamb. All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, is there a motion on the zoning?
I move that the planning board recommend approval of case F-1588.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Steelman, second by Mr. Lamb. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that's also unanimous.
Thank you. Next item on the consent agenda is B2, case W1714. This is a final development plan for property that's zoned HBS 2-phase. It's 5.34 acres on the south side of East Haynes Mill Road, west of Brassfield Drive. This is a photo of the subject property looking east on East Haynes Mill Road. The subject property is straight across from us on the right-hand side. This is the final development plan proposed by the petitioners. It is for an adult daycare with 140 participants. The site plan meets the original zoning conditions and all applicable provisions of the UDO, so staff recommends approval.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Corley? Is there a motion?
I move that the planning board approve the final development plan of case W1714.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Grubb, second by Mr. Lamb. All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item on the consent agenda is B3, case W3420. This is a request to rezone 6.59 acres from GI and GO to E. The property is located on the east side of Ivy Avenue, south of East Northwest Boulevard. This area is just north of downtown. This is a photo of the subject property looking north on Ivy Avenue at the intersection with Northwest Boulevard. That building on the right-hand side is a part of the subject property proposed to be rezoned. And this is another view, again, looking north on Ivy Avenue. This includes more of the subject property without buildings on it. The area plan specifically recommends industrial use for the site, but we believe that recent investment, rezoning, and redevelopment in the area has significantly changed the conditions for development at this location. E-zoning exists across the street, and the E-district allows a number of low-impact industrial uses anyway, like manufacturing A and warehousing. It's also consistent with legacy and area plan recommendations to encourage reuse and redevelopment of vacant or underutilized industrial and commercial properties. So staff recommends approval of this request.
Can I ask a question? This week we heard that the school system is interested in putting a school in this area. How does the E-zoning affect a potential school?
So E doesn't allow the use school.
It what?
It does not allow the use school. So the school, if there is a proposed school, it wouldn't be allowed to be placed on this property or any other property in the area that's zoned E.
And I don't believe it's exactly on that. It's across the street is the proposal. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
But would there
about
be
that.
uses in E that would prevent a school from being located within X number
Yeah,
of feet?
I mean,
I
is
think
it
it's the
a-
question. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
The other thing, I mean, again, it's actually the antithesis of that. A school can go anywhere if you have an establishment that's not permitted within a distance of a school, i.e., an adult establishment or something like that. It's a school could go there even if there were an adult establishment there. It would be incumbent upon the adult establishment. If they closed, they wouldn't be able to reopen there.
What about,
to that effect.
are schools allowed to be operated next to bars?
Yes.
So there's no problem with that? Okay.
Downtown elementary
There,
school.
that's
may
right.
be a
There are
good
some right
example.
within a block of that, yeah. Yeah.
Runs, sure.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions?
I just have one of staff. As this area continues developing, will we see site plans along the way, or how does that occur? How does that progress?
Not within an E district. EL or E district does not require planning board or planning staff approval of a site plan. It's the inspections division. So, yeah, site plans are not required.
Right, to go along with what Gary is saying, the site plans for specific development in E districts that aren't special use districts will be reviewed at the permitting stage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Is there a motion on this request?
I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Bryan. All those in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous.
I also move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3420.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All those in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Next item on the consent agenda is B4, case W 3426. This is just a zoning jurisdiction conversion for property that was recently annexed into the city from the county. It's 30.61 acres on the southeast side of Fishel Road, east of Peters Creek Parkway. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Corley on this one? Is there a motion on consistency?
I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay,
Also-
unanimous.
I'm sorry. I also move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3426.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All those in favor, raise your hands, please. Okay, that's also unanimous.
Thank you. Next item on the consent agenda is B5, case W3427. This is a request to rezone 1.76 acres from HBS to PBL on the southwest corner of Waughtown Street and East Sprague Street. This is a view of the subject property from the intersection of Waughtown Street and East Sprague Street. The subject property is in the background. It's the commercial building on the left. And then this is a view from East Sprague Street looking toward the rear of the subject property. So the subject property is on the left side where you see the zoning sign and that existing vegetation. The petitioner has volunteered a condition to preserve and maintain the existing landscape area with that mature vegetation. That's the only condition that they've proposed with their request. And staff recommends approval of this request.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Corley? Is there a motion on consistency?
I move the planning board finds the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All those in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous.
And I move that the planning board recommend approval of W3427.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All those in favor, raise your hands. It's also unanimous.
Thank you. The next item on the consent agenda is item C1, which is a preliminary subdivision 2019-096. It's a 16-lot subdivision named Misty Ridge. It's almost 6 acres at the western terminus of Misty Ridge Drive, and it's west of Ridgeback Drive. This is the preliminary subdivision plan that was submitted. It meets all all applicable UDO standards, and staff recommends approval of the subdivision.
Move approval.
Is there a second? Okay. Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Bryan. All those in favor, raise your hands. It's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item on the consent agenda is D1. It's a planning board review item 2019-05. This is a planned residential development named Miller's Reserve with 173 lots. It's on 51.33 acres on the west side of Everett Road, south of Fraternity Church Road. This is a copy of the preliminary plan. It meets all applicable standards of the UDO, including the use conditions for PRD, and the staff recommends approval of the request.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All in favor, raise your hands. It's unanimous.
And then the last item on the consent agenda is D2. It's Planning Board Review 96-32. These are improvements to Easton Elementary, 15.13 acres on the southeast side of Clemensville Circle and the eastern terminus of Bryson Street. This is the site plan that was submitted with this Planning Board review request. It meets all applicable requirements of the UDO, and staff recommends approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous.
I have no more items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corley. And we'll move on to the staff report. Mr. Murphy.
All right. Thank you very much. Just a few items. I would also like to echo what Chairman Dunnigan said earlier. Welcome to Councilmember Scipio. It's always glad to have you here. As far as items of note, just so you know, earlier today, the US 158 interchange study plan was adopted by the Forsyth County Commissioners. It will go to the town of Walkertown in early 2020 for their adoption. The Peters Creek Parkway Corridor Plan was also adopted today by the Forsyth County Commissioners. The City Council adopted that plan earlier in October, so that plan is now complete. Another item just of note is staff did participate in the Triad Gentrification Symposium that was held at the Anderson Center at Winston-Salem State last week. Obviously, that continues to be an issue and topic of discussion throughout the city, and that's something that we obviously need to be a part of and cognizant of. So we were there and actually participated in the discussion and breakout sessions. With that, I have a few other items, but with that, I'll turn to Desmond to go over the caseload for December, which doesn't look too extensive at this point unless something has changed in the last 4 or 5 hours that I don't know about.
You all are going to love December. There's one rezoning request. It's a special use request at Redeemer Presbyterian Church on Miller Street. And then there's one planning board review item for a private cemetery. This is out in the county. That's it.
Other items at your place, you have a copy of the quarterly development dashboard report, if you just want to take a look at that at your leisure. Also at your place is an announcement for a retirement celebration tomorrow in this room from 2 to 4 for Lynn and Margaret. So if you're available to make it, we would love to have you. I heard...
I assume they're packing their offices this afternoon?
That's why the elevator broke.
One of them, it will take a little bit longer than the other one. One of them's been working on it a while. I heard Mr. Lamb talking earlier how he enjoyed not having a work session in October. Well, congratulations. You won't have one in November either unless you want to be here on Thanksgiving. You'll be here by yourself.
You're cooking the turkey up.
Yeah. Just to update, the next airport and Whitaker Park special area study meeting will be held on December 5th at 6 p.m. at the Haynes Hosiery Rec Center. And the last item that I have is, we've already talked about what you'll have on the agenda, but the December 12th Planning Board meeting, if you would plan on coming early, we'll have our usual holiday hors d'oeuvres at 3:30, and if we can get everyone here, I think we may be to the point we're going to take a picture regardless of whether we can get everyone here, but I think the plan is to try to take the new planning board picture at that meeting. So if everyone can try to attend, that would be great. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Dunnigan.
Okay, is there anything else for the good of the order?
I'd like to thank Chairman Dunnigan for serving extraordinarily well in Chris's absence, and congratulate her on the good service.
Even more efficient than Mr. Lee.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Good job.
Pretty good.
Faster now.
Yes.
What's going to happen?
That's fantastic.